Okay, this is what we're going to make today. I'm making a bunch of these weed eater racks. There's a handle here that tightens up. This way, this is where you can lock your weed eater, and you can have it up out of the way or turn it this way out of the way and lock it in place, and it'll stay out of the way. Or you can loosen this up, put your weed eater rack there and lock it down, and you can tighten that up and it won't bounce. So I have 50 of these I have to make. So as you can see, I have quite a few of them made. I got a jig that I made up here. I have all my parts here. I have the handles here. I have the lock pins here. I have a bar here. And I have all my hooks here. All of the hooks were bent on my press brake over here. I made a custom die, and it took, I think, 3 or 4 hits to get them bent. So let's make us a weed eater rack. I'll show you how I do these. I think they average about 15 minutes, 15-20 minutes. Since I'm explaining it, it'll probably take close to 20 minutes. But I'll try to explain it, as I'm building it, on what I do and why I do it. I build these in a sequence to where I can handle them, because you'll have parts that are hot after you weld them, and you need to be able to grab certain parts or whatnot. First thing I do is I put my 2 pieces of angle down here. Then there's a hole drilled underneath here, and I'll go ahead and I'll mark that hole out. It's not super critical because the part I'm putting down in there has room for adjustment. This is just a general location for the hole, as long as I get it closed. I use cobalt bits. They last longer, and I got this lube that cools it. So once I have the hole drilled in this piece here, it lines up with that hole there. Then I'll take my square tubes. I'll put one here and one here. And if there's a gap, I make the gap even on both sides. Once I have those in place, I'll go ahead and I'll put one tack just to hold them from them moving. So now that I can take those clamps off, now that that's tacked into place, I'll go ahead and I'll set 9 of these out. 3, 6 on this side, and 3 on the other. And then I'll grab my pipe in my round bar. The pipe I'll put so the hole's facing up on the bottom side, and then the solid bar I'll just set here, I have the handles with nuts or bolts welded on them already, and then I have a nut all the way on there also. So what I'll do is I'll just weld this on. And we make sure that it turns when we weld it. You have to be careful on the sides because there's a slight gap, and you don't want a BB getting in there and stopping your bolt. And you can see that it turns freely. Since this is freshly welded, that's extremely hot. So what I'll do is I'll move in onto these hooks, and I'll give that a chance to cool. I'll tap one side, and I'll weld the other. And then I'll go and weld the top. So in actuality, that's welded on two sides already. I have these marked where they're supposed to be. And they're not super critical. You know, if they're within 1/4 of an inch, it still won't even be noticeable. But, you know, I have lines marked out on here so you can see where they go. You know, I think they might be 1/8 off if the most. But they're all pretty much straight. So I got those 3 hooks welded on. And I'll go ahead and I'll weld these 3 hooks on. You can see the marks here. And what I'm doing is I'm just lining them up with the bottom of the line. So that's why, you know, they're pretty straight. You know, while I'm welding these hooks on, that nut or the handle that I just welded on, by the time I get done, those will be cool. Or cool enough to touch anyway. And then after I get these welded on, you know, these are all still fairly hot. Because they're welded on both sides. What we'll do is we'll go ahead, then now we'll move on to welding these. Once I get all this welded in place, I'm actually only welding half of it because it's in the jig. So once I get these welded, it gives it enough time for the hook to get cool enough to put the straight rod in there for the center hooks. You'll see once I get to that point. Okay, all of those are welded in place. Now this is cool enough I can loosen it up. It's still a little warm, but it's not, you know, extremely hot. I'll go ahead and I'll slide my rod through there, and this is my adjustment, or this is my locking rod, I would say. So I'll go ahead and I'll clamp that in place, and I'll slide this bar up as far as it'll go. I'll put a tack on this bottom side. The bottom side has a 3/16 gap. The top side is completely tight towards the top. There's a locking tab that goes on the bottom. So having that gap there, so there's less weld to get in the way of this sliding bar, the better off it is. Then you actually get a stronger weld on the bottom because of the gap, and that's where your lock is going to be. So some clown tries to take a hammer to it and break it. You know, that ain't going to happen. That ain't going anywhere. So now we'll take those hooks off, and we'll slide this down and then up just a little bit. We'll make sure that this is tight and straight. So now we'll go ahead and we'll grab this bar, and we'll grab one of these locking tabs. The bar will just sit here for now, but the locking tab has a hole in it which will match up with the hole here. This way you can put a padlock in there. So we'll go ahead and we'll tack this. Then we'll go ahead and we'll weld it. This helps to keep our bar straight and keep it from turning. This also gives it a little time for all those hooks to get a little bit cooler. So as you can see, you know, we're bouncing around. We're not welding in the same place. This bar has these rubber spots on it because these hooks are getting rubber glued on it after it's painted. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll clamp this bar that's perfectly straight, and then I'll go ahead and I'll weld this hook into place. This is the locking hook. I weld the bottom, that way it pulls it tight to the rod. And then I'll tack the top. And then I'll move up to the next one. And you'll see that it's tight. Now I'll go ahead and I'll stick this one in here, clamp it in place, and do the same thing. Put the bar there, and then I'll put my locking hook and weld it. Okay, these get welded all the way around. But for now, it's just going to get a good tack. And we'll go ahead and take this off, and we'll do our last one. It's nice and tight in there. And then we'll go ahead and we'll do our last one. Okay, we'll go ahead and we'll take these clips off. And we'll take this bar out of here. And now we can finish welding. We'll put the bar back in the bucket over here. And we'll lift this up out of the frame. And we'll slide it this way some because we're going to loosen this up. So we're going to slide this up and we're going to turn it because we need to weld the top of this so water doesn't get into it. And we'll weld our sides. Then we'll go ahead and we'll flip this over and we'll do the other side. Now that's welded all the way around. We can slide that back into place and go ahead and tighten that because we're done with that. That center bar is welded all the way around, all the hooks. Now we will go ahead and weld the other side of both hooks because they're welded on the inside. So we'll go ahead and we'll weld everything on the outside on both sides now. Okay, now the bottoms are welded all the way around. The hooks are welded on the tops and both sides. So we'll go ahead and we'll flip this over and we'll go ahead and weld the other side now and do the same thing. And that's that. That's all of it. And I can just move on to the next one. And we'll put this here. And you can see the hooks are welded all the way around the top, so it won't allow water to get in them. These are welded all the way around, so it won't allow water in those either. And that's pretty much it. That's how all of these are done. I think that's, with this one here, that's 22 racks. And that's how you weld a weed eater rack together.